Hi, and welcome to Beyond the First Response. It's Christy Lister here, along with my co-host.
Sierra Dooley Madrid.
How are you?
I'm good, and you?
Good. I am, before we get to our guest, hopefully the sound is okay. I am remote today. And a cute little shop, I have to give them a shout out because they're letting me do this here. And I found a little corner. I should have brought a light, so I got the little table light, but it's a little place called Anna's on the Lake. So if ever you're in Kenosha, Wisconsin, come check it out. It's adorable. And the coffee's good. So I'm caffeinated and ready to roll. I'd like to introduce Sara Clow. She is a widow, a survivor of police suicide, and along with now advocating with NAMI. And I'm sorry, I forget again. If you'd like to go ahead and fully introduce yourself, Sara, I'll let you tell the other side.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, both of you. I appreciate it. So I currently work part-time where I actually get paid with NAMI Nevada, doing a lot of different trainings in Northern Nevada that advocate mental health and law enforcement. So I've stayed true to my law enforcement background. And then additionally, I am a board member at American Foundation Suicide Prevention for the state of Nevada. And once again, Northern Nevada is my region. Do a lot of trainings, engage in a lot of different coalitions, whatever it may be. And my emphasis is always law enforcement and suicide to honor my husband.
Well, thank you for giving him a voice, because we all know that unfortunately their voices were silent and nobody could hear them screaming for help, because we're all taught to remain quiet and hold it in. So it's so important that we now are having these conversations, giving them the voice that they couldn't give, so that they can help not only other officers, but families as well. And actually anybody who's out there listening. Sometimes all it takes is just one conversation, and we're able to bring light to somebody to get help that they need. And a lot of that help comes from NAMI. So do you want to tell us, when you're going around training, what are you doing?
So NAMI has a program called the Crisis Intervention Team Training, and the basis of this is to de-escalate and divert mental health and behavioral crisis calls from law enforcement into the mental health arena. Unfortunately, a lot of our law enforcement these days have become the social workers and the mental health providers and everything else that they didn't sign up for, let me add. They did not sign up for this, but this is how, our society has pushed it. And the problem is that a lot of these calls, suicide attempts, suicide, whatever it may be, mental health breakdowns, they're a cry for help. And trying to just, old-fashioned way was, well, what do? We're just going to handcuff them and take them to jail, and we just have repeat offenders over and over. And they don't really need to be jailed. Somebody that's crying out for help, as we all know, if kindness and compassion would be presented to them, and the question of how can I help you today is presented to them, maybe we can de-escalate that and then find the resources that they really need. And those resources are other people that want to help them and take them in. So the training is a 40-hour training. In the state of Nevada, it's mandated. Wisconsin is the state that started this many, many years ago. And it really is 3 legs, we call it, to the stool. It is the mental health industry. It is the advocate industry, such as NAMI, American Foundation Suicide Prevention, H.E.L.P. And then it is law enforcement. So the 3 of us have to intersect and try to figure out how we can make all of this work together with the limited resources we have, with limited knowledge, but just enough to know what's going on. The trainings are long, they're impactful. These law enforcement officers are getting a lot of social mental health terminology thrown at them, but we try to give it to them at bite size, just so they understand what's the difference between a schizoaffective person, somebody that's in depression, how to reach somebody that looks like they're going to be suicidal, not being afraid to ask the questions, the hard questions. It's very, very important. I always take the opportunity when I talk about suicide or suicide attempts to look at each and every one of them in the room and remind them that this is the face that got left. This is the person whose world turned upside down, who has this new mission and purpose and path in life, but it was not planned. And it's sad and it's hard. And I make them all look at each other and say, I want you not to be afraid to look at your buddy and say, are you okay? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Well, I said, I don't care if they laugh at you, spit in your face, whatever. The outcome or the consequence of not doing that and something happening is me standing in front of you today. So that's what we're
Absolutely.
doing with NAMI.
That's absolutely, and it's interesting. I'm curious during this
Mhm.
training because they're
Mhm.
so good at removing their emotion to evaluate a situation,
Mhm.
reading other people's emotions. They, especially when they're overworked, they're now been held over on shift. They may now have worked 5, 6 days, 7 days in a row. They're
Mhm.
exhausted, they're done, and they're at their breaking point mentally themselves from exhaustion and work. Are they able to, or I guess, what are you giving them to recognize and practicing these these tools so that they can recognize the difference between a mental health crisis and a criminal crisis?
Right. And I mean, it's very good. We do scenarios, but of course, law enforcement is used to doing scenarios, right? They do scenarios through all of their training activities, but we really try to present scenarios where somebody is suicidal or somebody is schizoaffective and they're talking to themselves and they don't want to move and all these different situations. And it's interesting because their normal training is we're going to come up, we're going to treat you like a criminal, name, date of birth, da, da, da. And you cannot do that when somebody is in a mental health crisis, whatever that crisis may be. Teaching them that they really have to come up with kindness and compassion first. Once they understand, and we always say this, no threat to them, a community, or the person's self, right? That's when it crosses over to criminal. But if it's not, and this person is just distraught and can't figure out life, that they have to come to them just like another person, their sister, their mother, their brother, their cousin, their coworker, whoever it may be, with how can I help you today? What is going on? With the kindness of that voice, bringing it down just a notch. So it's really trying to teach them to approach a situation that way. And I will say the younger officers get it, right? There's so much more verbiage and mentality and thought process around, things that are happening in mental health. It's very hard, the middle rank and the upper rank, to have them change their perspective that they've been doing for so long. And you don't want to force feed anybody, but we just have to keep on presenting it to them that this is why we want to do this.
Well, and looking at that during the training, I mean, you've got seconds as an officer, as a firefighter, as dispatch, trying to explain the situation, why they are rolling up on the call. You have a very minimal amount of time, and the older minds are trained so much react. How do you teach or explain to them that taking that breath back, that moment to engage your senses to understand whether or not this situation is mental health crisis, drug related, criminal?
Sure. And so I'm going to go back to the front end of dispatch. So I will let you know we include dispatch is in training. Dispatch is vital and important to this effort. They need to understand a call is a mental health or behavioral so they can help their officers arriving on scene. So they learn how to ask the questions and understand. The other half of that equation is that we have to teach society. If you know that somebody is in a mental health, you have a family member and you know they have these issues, please let dispatch and law enforcement enforcement know, because then they can arrive with the right mentality. So that's the perfect solution, right? That's the,
Right.
crescendo, everything happened the right way. Dispatch got it, law enforcement got it, and we all can approach this with that mentality. What happens when that doesn't occur? And, mother's calling saying something's going on with son has gun, knife, but doesn't share mental health issues in the past, right? And law enforcement rolls up and sees weapon and goes right into this is not a good situation. So it is a matter of trying to assess and learning how to take a step back. And that is not easy for law enforcement because their training is always, as you said, react to the situation, get it neutralized and move on. And it's a gut call, and it's them really trying to take that breath before and say, let's see if this situation's a little bit different. I think suicide, even though there's so much stigma around suicide, I still think the calls for suicide by cop, no cop wants to be involved by suicide by cop. I think they're starting to get a little bit better. They have so much training with the Columbia, questionnaire and everything, that they are starting to understand I have to determine if that's what this call is about. And then understand this person's in crisis and how can I get them not to shoot themselves, not to try to have me shoot them, not to jump off the bridge, whatever, the methodology may be at that point in time. But it is more difficult the higher up the ranks you go and the older the officers are. So I don't think I answered your question fully, but we are trying to take a multi-pronged approach at this. Involved.
Yeah, you definitely said that. Statistically, because you said Nevada, Wisconsin, how many other states again?
Oh, so all 50 states,
Require the training?
not required.
Okay.
All 50 states have some type of not like mandatory. Nevada has mandatory everybody. There are a couple states that are mandatory. The other ones have just been pushed out there with success stories, and success breeds success. So they hear about it, they want to know about it. How did this situation, resolve itself in the way we want it to versus forcefully? But NAMI has offices in all 50 states, and NAMI is a big proponent of this. So we are pushing that program out.
I have a question. Just because we talked about dispatch, we talked about law enforcement. Is fire or EMT a part of this too?
Yes. So I will tell you, initially it was law enforcement only. Then dispatchers said, well, what about us? Hello, we take the calls, right? So then dispatch started rolling in, and they were like, well, should dispatch be different than law enforcement? Well, why not? No. They all work together. They are a team. Let them sit in and hear what their officers are learning as well as them. We've now rolled in fire, EMT, corrections. So in terms of the CIT itself and the 40-hour certificate, anybody that is first responder or in the family of first responder would take that class. Additionally, we are starting to move classes out into the layman, is what I'm calling it, people that engage with people that have mental health. So let's give an example: security officers in all of our casinos. Instead of calling 911 all the time, we want to teach them how to de-escalate as well and what resources are available. So now we've got a CIP, which is crisis intervention for our partners. People that work with law enforcement deal with the same people and perhaps can take care of the problem without engaging 911.
And that's where we're teaching them resiliency within themselves first comes into play, which is what really first help is going around. Our responder readiness, our family readiness courses are teaching that resiliency, giving them the tools to practice every day. So when they do get in a situation, they are able to recognize the difference in somebody in mental health crisis. Now, Ciara's getting involved, if I'm correct, right? She's going to be coming out and speaking with you. Ciara, tell us about it.
Yeah. So once again, the training is a component of all these things. We want to give them bite-sized pieces of different mental health conditions so they understand those. And then the other side of it is officer wellness. That is just as important, right? So Ciara's coming out, I call it under the officer wellness, making sure that they understand that they're just important as a community. They are the community. We're all in this together. And so she is going to present, the first help, what first help can do for the officer, for the family. We want them to understand, although I will tell you, they all, put up their badge of honor whenever I talk about suicide or resources for them directly. They're all going to ignore you and act like they don't hear anything you say. But if we just keep on coming at them and letting them know you are still human, when you take off that badge, you are still a human and you need help and support. And there are a lot of different organizations that want to do that for you. And so Ciara's coming out to share that. I've got some people coming out about suicide. I've got people coming out about the different peer support things. And once again, it's like being able to just leave the materials behind, giving them a QR code. I always say, take my number. You can text, call anytime you want. And I confidentially, I will send you wherever you need to go. And I always say, and Ciara should say this as well, we are widows of you. We belong to your family. I always say, I belong to your family. Don't let this happen to another family member. I will listen to you. I will help you in any way I can. So that is what Ciara is coming out for that component, to share that. So it's vitally important. They need to get it all.
Yeah, and they definitely need to understand that comes from the family side. The family serves next to you with that invisible vest, that invisible headset, helmet, whatever first responder world you're in, your family is there. And the only time that I realized it, and I think Ciara as well, was after the fact. So if we give them these tools before the fact, it can help not only themselves, but their family recognize when they are in crisis.
Yes, I will tell you, I get asked a lot when I'm doing these trainings, and most of the facilitators at the law enforcement that I work hand in hand with on these know my story, know where I come from, understand. And I always get asked, would you mind sharing your story? Which I already know is going to happen, right? So I'm somewhat prepared wherever my mental self is that day. My story might change a little bit. It could be super in depth, super teary, or I could just be on point, I've got it down. But I'm very clear to them about being a wife of 32 years, somebody that I lived with for an awful long time. And in hindsight, what I chose not to recognize. And that I'm sorry for that, but that's, as a family member, you work in your dynamics, you have your different roles and all that kind of stuff. And I said, yes, did I know things were going on with my husband? Of course, I knew what he did for a living. I knew he dealt with the worst of the worst in a very large, county that had a lot of different things going on. But trying to talk to somebody. Did he try to talk to somebody? Did he not try to talk to somebody? Did his partner not recognize there was something different? They spend more time at work than they do with family life. And we all know that. So I get pretty raw with them. If someone tells me to ask my story, to let them know that, and the children they leave behind and the dogs they leave behind. And I always share the ripple effect story too. There's probably so many people that got affected by this that I'm not even aware of.
Sara, how old were your kids when your husband died?
They were adults. So
they were adults. Okay.
Yeah. My husband was 61 when he took his life. So he had been a man of service for 40, maybe more than 40 years, because he was a veteran and then went into law enforcement. And his father was in law enforcement and was a veteran. So it was a really solid family. And there's a lot of family dynamics there that I know led to a lot of the different issues. But my youngest son was 30 and my older son had just turned 35 4 days before. So.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
When I first met Sara, I'll just tell a little piece. I first met Sara at the suicide walk here in Sparks. It was the 2022 walk. And I was standing talking to Carrie from Forever 14 up here because it had come across my Facebook the night before that there was a suicide walk. And I'm like, I didn't know any of this. I was completely oblivious to it. And Sara came up behind me and she put her arm around me and she goes, I recognize your blue line law enforcement suicide shirt. And I just turned and I looked at her and I could cry just seeing like her face. Like she knew immediately like what I was going through and what she had gone through. And she just hugged me and she's like, I got you. And then her son came in and hugged me. And then like I spent my time with them and then we exchanged numbers. And that was, you know, over a year ago now. And my neighbor that was with me, she always told me, Sara is going to be the one that she's going to drive you. She's going to push you and she's going to have your back. And I will 100% say that because she's the one that came out and walked with me on New Year's Eve day when it was pouring rain at the marina. It was freezing and pouring rain. And that was the first time like we've both really shared our stories with each other. And it was after that, like my life changed to, I mean, I was already doing things, but to really push into the world of being an advocate for the mental health because like Sara said, you see it and then you don't see it. Like you choose to like, oh, okay, this is going to be okay, or this is going to change, and it doesn't. And I always think of right after Matt died, and this pertains to Sara too, because I remember being heartbroken. And it was a mental health call. It was all over the news. And it was a kid from my hometown in Boulder City. He had suffered from mental health disorder prior. And I believe it was LVMPD. I don't think it was North Las Vegas, but they got a call for him and he was in his apartment complex with a machete. And the body cam footage was, he was a 27-year-old rookie and he tried so hard to de-escalate. Like it was heartbreaking, like seeing the body cam footage, because that's another thing, like being a widow, like you're super, like you want to watch it, even though you know it'll hurt. Like, yeah, I watch these things, but he ended up having to shoot and kill the kid. But that's I think that's where even more so, Sara, like your job comes in hand because you're teaching them that this, you went in with this mindset and you did all you could. Now let's look at you. Now let's look at what you're going through after the fact, because I gave you all the tools to recognize and try to help, but you couldn't, because we can't save everybody. We know that. Everybody should know that. But now let's save you. Let's help you through this crisis that you're going to go through inside having to take somebody's life. And I think that is something in the world of mental health that we have lacked for so long. And it's amazing to see it come true. I'm so proud to be part of it. I'm honored. Like I'm so excited, like a kid in a candy shop. I know that sounds really bad because what it is, but it, as we know, this is my passion to change the lives of our first responders and make them known that it's okay to not be okay. And it just, when we can get together with people that want to make change, it brightens my day.
Yeah. I would like to share just a really quick story about that. I participated, actually, I went through a whole 40-hour CIT training myself with a local jurisdiction here, our Carson City Sheriff's Office. So I was in right with all, the law enforcement officers, corrections, dispatch, everything. One of the stories and events that they shared was a suicide by cop story. And I had no idea what this was. It was the five gentlemen that had this issue occur many years prior. They all stood up in front. They'd all been promoted, ranked up, everything. Two of them were brothers. One brother was the lead. One brother was the sniper. A gentleman was holding his baby up to his head with a gun. So they knew this was going to be a no-win situation, very stressful, lasted for a very long time. The end result is that they did charge the apartment. They killed the gentleman and saved the baby. But what really got me was these gentlemen standing up in front and then telling their after story. Alcohol, drugs, divorce, sadness, not being able to hold things together under this pretense. You know, they go through their de-escalation themselves after a situation like this, very, you know, white room, tell me your story, bam, bam, bam. Okay, all process driven. And then they walk out and they're like, but I'm still left with this. I'm left with the picture of this baby and this man and all, and the two brothers terrified that one of them was going to die because they were both on this call. And it was heartbreaking, and it was warming to hear that they banded together and recognized all the things that were going on with them. And one decided to seek counseling, right? Kind of an odd thing to do. The other one found out about it. All of them eventually went to counseling. Did it save all their marriages and all of their problems? Absolutely not. There was a divorce out of there. There was a estranged marriage right now. But they've stopped drinking. They banded together. They've gone to therapy, and this is what they do. They talk about it. They talk about it to other law enforcement officers, which I just thought so brave.
Yes.
And every year on the anniversary, they get together. That day is their day and only their day to all be together and to just kind of support one another. And I thought that is so powerful. They all have to know they're just people. And that's a horrible, horrific thing that they go through and that they see. And they have to self-care. They just have to, you know.
I wish I could tell them thank you for doing that and taking the initiative of seeking counseling, even just one. Because when you seek it on your own, instead of being put on administrative leave, forced to do it, it's not going to make a difference, especially when there's no follow-up after. I say that if, you know, we knew all this prior, it would not have saved Ken's and my marriage. However, it would have saved his life. He would still be here for the kids. He could still be here, you know, loving his life and being in a happy place. Unfortunately, you know, that's not the outcome, as we know, for everybody. And I'm proud of them for saying, you know, no, I drank a lot. I got a divorce because of it, but you're stronger because you provided yourself those tools by reaching out to somebody.
Yes,
That's success.
we have to help them understand not only removing that stigma and the fear and the thought process that goes through them, but that it's okay. You know, I think we all know that. I have moments, I'm sure each of you ladies do. I have days where I just feel like I can't do this anymore. Am I triggering my own self? I can't do this, you know, and then, you know, I pull myself back together. I call it, I have to have a mini tune-up. You know, I have to go through some type of process, some type of self-healing to recognize, pull yourself back down, just because of the tools that I've learned in these last 5 years since his death. They need to understand that too. Everybody has those moments, right? No one doesn't not have a day that's a bad day.
Right. Ciara, you've already gained a ton of tools as we've been doing this, getting involved. You're about to just like enrich yourself with everything that when you go and do the course and speak, it's healing. It's incredibly eye-opening when they are vulnerable, and you will have vulnerable ones that are willing to say. You will have some. I had one that reached out to his ex-wife after I spoke at the PD and said, oh my God, this is how my kids are with me. And it scared him because it's the brutal truth of this is what it looks like if we don't teach them to process, which is exactly what we've all not done, process. And in that, Sara, you don't be sorry for something you didn't understand at the time, because we could justify why they're acting or reacting in the way that they were. And don't apologize. Just say, I didn't have the tools. I know that now. But I still go back and go, well, if I only had, but I didn't. And I couldn't have. I was taught not to look at anything. I was taught to not feel anything. So your family is training with you. Let's teach them and teach your surrounding, your upper officers, your upper management, that it's okay.
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, we all need tools. We all need to understand, and it is a family event, right? It affects all of us. We're all in it together. We all hear the stories. We all see, the person that comes home that's had, seen something horrible and is just acting a little bit different. I think of the times when my son saw my husband, not in the best of condition, pretty heavily drinking to try to drown whatever he had just witnessed or been engaged with that day. And everybody was just pretty good about, we need to leave that alone, because we felt like that was the medication. That was what he needed. Where really I'm not going to tell anybody you can't do whatever it is you want to do, but I always say, come on, there's a line. We all know where the line is, and you need to understand where that is. And if you think you're going to cross the line, you need to understand what you have available to you, and how to approach that in a way that's loving and kind, and not, intrusive to changing whoever this person is. So yeah, I definitely say I know more now. And because of that, I'm a better person, right? That's, yeah.
That goes right back to like when we talked with Pat, and I don't know if you saw that when the firefighter that is sober that I grew up with, we talk about how when you've gone through something like we have and like he did with his addiction, it changes you and you look back and go, okay, I thought I was a good person, and it's not that I was a bad person, but I'm a better person now because of our traumas and our healing and our tools. Now we're a better person for society. And I think that it means a lot to, I think, especially to the newer generation police officers, right? Because they understand when you speak to them like that, like rather where the older ones go, okay, whatever. Kind of, it's kind of like that, right? Like,
Sure,
okay,
that's what they're saying.
yeah. But I mean, and there is some that we do know that, they have a different mindset and they are for the mental health change and all that. But when we break it down, it's the mass majority. That's why we still have the stigma we do. But it's moving forward to that everybody can be a better person with just these tiny little tools that you put in your invisible tool belt. And even if it's a sticky note on your bathroom mirror in the morning that you read over and over and over again, or going to counseling, or even just like we've talked, the cold showers after your shift, that decompression that is lacking in so many departments of coming off of a shift, from fire to EMT to dispatch Leo, like it's lacking, where there's none of that, where it's okay, you're done, you go home. And that comes from the family side too. I'm not going to say that it's all their fault. It comes from the family side too, because as we all know, there's plenty of family dynamics out there that say, oh, you're off, you need to come home, I've been home with the kids all day for 12 hours. Like, yes, 100%, but you need to be given these tools to help your marriage succeed and help your first responder be healthy. And I think that that's even though it's not happening in Northern Nevada yet, but the family first responder readiness is going to be such an impact. And I think that will be a huge change in movement, because as we've talked, and being on the other side now, if we all had the tools and the friendships that we could go to and talk privately about what we were going through in our homes, then things may have been different, because we would have been able to recognize it differently and not just been like, oh, as Christy said the other day, this is just my four walls. It's not everybody's four walls. So I'm excited to implement that with you, Sarah, because you and we've had many, many talks, and obviously Christy too, but that will be a huge part of our stigma change and helping the officers, whether it's, a female cop or a male cop or vice versa, whatever it may be. Changing the family dynamic too will really be impactful.
Just don't let her convince you to take a cold shower every day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I just wanted to add a comment there. The support group that you all offer, for the family members, right? And that everybody is engaged in this, because I think I was much like you ladies, where our situation was our situation. Nobody knew what was happening in our house. I did. My husband was a very, very well-known man, very gregarious and happy, and I got the I can't believe that this happened to Alan,
Mhm.
and because we held it, right? My job of the wife and the mother was to protect my family and present my family in the best way possible. I didn't have other women that were in my situation that I wanted to cross that bridge and talk about, right? This is what's going on, without what I thought was hurting my family. And we need to remove those walls and be able to support one another, whether it's a man staying home because he has a female officer, vice versa. Like you said, Sarah, it doesn't matter. It really needs to encompass all of us. Need some type of knowledge and support of how we can work through this together. And I do agree. I think it is going to get better. We have a couple different, chiefs and upper leadership here in Northern Nevada, Sierra, that you and I have hit, very proactive. Once again, that success and what we show them and they implement it is just going to keep on breathing. And we just have to take it one bite at a time.
One conversation at a time helps break the stigma. You see the change in one person, that one person is giving it to another person, and it's paying it forward. Now, with NAMI, obviously, we know what you're doing with the crisis intervention team. American Foundation, Suicide Foundation Prevention. What do you do for them? Are you implementing this over on that side as well?
Yes, so for them, I do most of the training, also sit on a lot of the different suicide prevention coalition boards, whatever it may be up here in Northern Nevada. But the foundation is about education, about research, and about different programs and supporting. So we don't have like support groups. We facilitate trainings, various trainings, right? From whether it's training teachers about suicide prevention to work folks about it, LGBT, veterans, everything is kind of geared towards them understanding the research and the statistics behind suicide, what to look for, maybe how to talk. We've done a lot with media because we are trying to remove the harmful words about suicide, desensationalize it, right? It is still, at the end of the day, it is a death. You don't commit a death, you die by something, right?
Thank you.
So yes, so those are things that we're very, very proactive on. And then just me, once again, my swim lane due to the husband and everything I do is to honor him, working with veterans and also working with law enforcement. So anything that has to do with that, where they're trying to put together a panel, a coalition, anything that focuses on that and suicide prevention, I sit in. The biggest thing I can do, as you ladies know, is share my story.
Yes.
My story is the foundation of why I sit on the board and what it means. And so that's really all I can offer. I always say I'm not a clinician. I'm not a mental health person. My life changed 5 years ago, and this is who I am today. And I've learned a great deal along the way, but still the basis of why I'm here is because I lost a husband to suicide 5 years
And I
ago.
want to say too, because you said, committed,
Mhm.
completed is another one that I just have to throw out there, because you might think that's politically correct. And yeah, it may be PC. However, there is nothing complete when somebody dies by suicide. Nothing. So it disappoints me. I actually got in an argument, not an argument, but a debate over that with my friend who's a psychologist. She's like, no, you have to say it that way. I'm like, there's nothing complete. No, I'm not. He died by suicide,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
line of duty. Because if it wasn't like this and he learned to process, he might still be here today. Might not, but a better chance, right?
Mhm.
So thank you for acknowledging that. I'd high five you if you were right here.
Thank you. Yes, and I will tell you, it's very, difficult to navigate wanting to correct somebody. And I'm very good about if somebody is publicly speaking and they use the word commit, and of course, the back of my hair and my neck goes up. And then I always go a one-on-one and try to neutralize the situation about why that is a difficult word and why we are trying so hard to pull that word back, right? And people that's, my age group, those were the words we used. And so it's hard to pull that back from somebody that's ingrained. But if you can share why and the story and the impact that word has when somebody hears that word, I think once again, one conversation at a time, changing somebody to understand. Now I get it. I get that. I used the word committed up until 5 years ago. Now I get what the difference is. So now I better be speaking correctly.
It didn't even cross my mind, like, for up until you said something to me and you actually shared like American Foundation Suicide Prevention packet on this stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it didn't occur to me. Like, I mean, I hated the word completed from the day Matt died, and still to this day, that is, I think it makes my back of my hair, even just reading when people write that word. Like, I cannot stand that one. I mean, probably at the beginning of navigating his death, like I might have said it like in the widows group of suicide in Facebook when I was lost, right? But now, like, I know when I hear committed to, like, it makes my hair stand up. And I think I've said it one time since you told me about it and I read the thing, and then it clicked, like it finally, not finally, but like learning why, and then putting in the realization of, like you said, it's not a crime, and committed is a crime. That's you are committing a crime, or you're committing adultery, or what you're doing something wrong. Suicide is wrong, but it's not wrong like that.
You're
So
knowingly doing something wrong where
yes,
I am a true believer. They believe they are doing what is best for everybody involved.
absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
So I think that's a great, I try to correct people now. And even Danica has picked up on that somewhat. I mean, and it's hard for them too, because right, school's hard already. Teenagers are hard already. So like when she talks about it, like she'll say it, but then somebody will say it back to her. And maybe as she grows older too, and she matures and she heals, she'll be able to have the mindful conversation with them that you don't say it like this, we say it like this because of this reason. But for now, like she's just like, "Ugh, whatever." And like teenagers do. But I've even noticed it like with her, how that isn't said. And even Ryan, he doesn't say it like that anymore either. Like, because it's an active
And
conversation.
throw that in with people that are very spiritual or religious. In the Catholic world, suicide was a sin. So in the aspect of committing suicide, that's a sin. Now, my friend who is a fight, well, he's retired. His daughter died by suicide last year. I have to give kudos to the priest that did the funeral, because he never even once acknowledged it as a sin. He acknowledged it as an illness. He even said it's much like, cancer. Sometimes you can treat an illness, but it still takes your life. And unfortunately, this is what happened in this situation. And it doesn't define her. It doesn't define any of them. It defines a single moment of not being able to get comfortable in the feelings that you are feeling because you think you are alone and nobody will understand.
Agree. And I love what you say. I do always, in my conversation, just sharing a little bit about how active my husband was and the things he did. And I said, at the end of the day, how he died does not define how he lived on this earth for 61 years. His death is no different than somebody else's death. He was a wonderful person, great husband, father, friend to many. And I just want them to understand that, you know, just because he died by suicide does not change everything else he did in his life, you know. But it's not that I want to promote suicide to anybody, but I just want to let them know that there is a difference there.
Well, and that's not promoting it, just like asking, just like talking about it. You're not promoting it. You're acknowledging the presence of a struggle that many people lose their life to every day. And the more it's uncomfortable to talk about, right? It's uncomfortable to talk about when somebody is having an affair. It's like, oh God, same thing. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And
change doesn't happen in comfort.
No, everything is better on the other side of comfort and fear. If you're fearing that you might, hey, I got to go have a conversation with somebody. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a counselor. We can have a conversation. It's going to de-escalate whatever feelings I'm having, but understand that sometimes the feelings we think we're having are not actually what they are, right? That emotions wheel is full of things that you never would have thought it was. And peel it away and have a conversation to your family, to yourself, and it's okay.
I love, and to that, I always go back to, because as Christy said, I've learned a lot just doing the podcast from people that we've had on, and we've got to have conversations with a retired lieutenant from Metro. He sat here and he drilled it. Your anxiety is lying to you. And every time I'm anxious, I'm like, you liar. Like, you're lying to me right now. But
lying MFer.
Yes. But it's so true, because your anxiety will always get the best of you if you let it. So if you can de-escalate your own self too with your tools, then it changes. And then you could go out and change somebody else's world. Because I mean, I've not been shy about my struggles. Like, and I suffered before Matt even died, long before Matt had even died. So still, like, sometimes it's like Sara said, there's days where it's like, I would love to crawl into bed. Like today was one of them. I just love to go to bed and not deal with anything.
Yes.
But it's not going to happen, because my reality is, this is my reality, and I'm the only one that can change it. So I have to use the tools, and it's a cold shower, and it's tears in the shower, and it's letting the people know around me that I'm not doing okay, so that they not are on eggshells, but they're like, okay, today's a hard day. We get it. We know yesterday was a hard day for me. And that goes for anybody that struggles mentally. Like, you just have to have that communication. And if you're missing that piece, then you have to find how to incorporate that piece. Or maybe that, as I sent Christy last night, if it's not fitting in there, maybe it's time to remove that piece.
Yes.
And you can grow, because
Yes.
sitting inside four walls alone is not okay.
No. And I have to say that even through all that, as you are teaching families and first responders, our kids are listening. And even though they're struggling, I had a moment yesterday or the day before yesterday that I let a lot of my feelings out. And there was a lot of tears and words. And my daughter left, but she texted me, Mom, are you safe? So, because I ask her quite often, do you want to hurt yourself? Do you want to die? Do you want to take your life? So she just chose very similar, are you safe? That's her word. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm safe. I'm not good, but I'm okay in that aspect. So that was like a little blessing in all the negative that happens. There's always a positive. You got to dig down there. I mean, the positive is, look, you have a voice for him. You have a voice for yourself, and you found an understanding into things that we won't ever truly have an answer for.
Very correct. The one thing that, I've started to emphasize as well that you bring up, is the likelihood and the statistics of, a suicidal family.
Yes.
Losing a father figure, a mother figure, or whatever it may be, to suicide as a child. There's almost a 50% chance that they are going to go into that same arena they have a lot they have to process. And even though my children were older, my older son was found with a gun to his head within 9 months out in the desert in Las Vegas, was suicidal. The younger one came out about a year and a half after his dad died with drinking and drugs. And so both of them had to be taken care of. Their response was a lot different than mine. My trauma and all of my emotions were right up front. Their response was take care of mom.
Yes.
Natural response for two sons. And then as they saw mom starting to kind of come into her own and say, I'm okay, I'm super sad, but I'm okay, then their grief kicked in. So it's a scary thing to be faced with, but you are right. The words now are real.
Yes.
Words are you okay? I need to know everything is good with you.
Yes.
And like, it's not like just hey, I'm fine. It's like, use the right words back to me, or I'm going to respond.
Yes.
Yes.
So.
And my kids were very much like yours, even though mine were young, Sarah. Like, they went into the role of take care of mom. I mean, Danica she wasn't even 10 yet when Matt died. She turned 10 a few months later. And she's always been there up until recently, where all of it has come down onto her and she's feeling it. And it was this year for her and last year for my son, like your kids, like a year apart almost exactly, where it was just like, okay, well, and then okay. Like I told Ryan last time, like, it's almost eerie that it's almost a year to the date that both of them have gone through the same thing. And at the same time, you feel like you failed, right? Like a little bit, because you're like, what did I do wrong? Like, we didn't do anything wrong. Like we did everything we could in the eye of the darkest storms we've been through. And there's no right or wrong way. There was no right way that you did it with your adult children. There was no right way I did it with my young children. There's no right way Christy did it with her teenage kids and older, younger kids. But it's recognizing too, like you said, the mental health of them that is all, and I hate to say the word stigma, but it's always going to be with them for the rest of their lives because of how their fathers chose to leave this earth. And that I think that I hope, like, when people listen, that it makes them stop and go, I would never want that for my kid. Like, I know I hurt, but I would never, ever, ever want to bury my child to suicide. So why would I be thinking this? And I think but like I said, that's like that's part of the first responder family readiness program, because then we can speak to the family as to here's these tools for you. Because at the end of the day, like we've said, we can't save anybody. I mean, we can save people, but we can't save everybody. Sorry, I said that so wrong. So giving families tools to go forward with or without their first responder is a huge win in books for saving other people's lives.
It's interesting, Ciara, as you bring that up. We talked about how we started talking and advocating where the kids didn't, they didn't want to talk about how dad died. Well, that's exactly why kids are looking at them like, oh, that's the kid that their dad took his life. That's a kid whose dad couldn't stand being around. Their misunderstanding of it as they're going to grieve differently. Everybody grieves differently. You're going to have your ups and downs, the ebb and flows throughout your life, because grief doesn't ever go away. It just becomes a trigger periodically when there's something new, something you think, oh God, they would have loved that. Sometimes you go and turn and want to tell them and you're like, well, shit, they're not here. What am I doing? That kids are doing the same thing. And by us advocating and opening up and starting those conversations, even at home, even when we didn't have those to begin with, because if we sit there and talk about it, then we're acknowledging there's an issue that we can't handle. That's why we don't talk. That's what we're taught. So it's not something to apologize for. It's what the environment was. But now we're changing that environment so other families that are in those houses don't have to go through the same four walls that we lived in for so long. Sara, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I am going to be reaching out to our NAMI. I know that the NAMI in my area, in Will County in Illinois, they are putting together some, which is probably this CIT group. I need to reach out and find out if that's exactly what it is so that I can get involved in that, because utilizing that and bringing the family into that is a vital change for everybody. And not only that, NAMI has groups for so many different mental health issues. And I do want to bring that up because they're strong in your community, and you don't know about it because you don't want to admit, there's issues. Learn about the things like NAMI and Suicide Foundation, Prevention Foundation of Prevention. Sorry. My book went dark. I can't see. But at the end of the day, the more that we open up these resources and talk about these resources like NAMI, the less scary they become. And the more comfortable and normal they are in our communities, whether that's our first responder world community or our communities in which we live and work. So thank you so much. Your husband would be proud. He's watching. He's proud.
Well, thank you. I appreciate everything that you do as well. And Ciara and I are, we're dedicated to making an impact in the area that we live. And I think, we just extend that community to everyone, and share our stories, be the people that we are today. And yes, they are watching us all.
Yes. So for more information on NAMI, we will definitely have it in our show notes. All you have to do is Google NAMI or your NAMI in Nevada, NAMI in Wisconsin, NAMI in Illinois. It will give you the locations and check it out. There's a plethora of information in there. Utilize it every day. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
We are excited to be able to start our day with Badge Brew Coffee. Hey Robin, did you know that Badge Brew has a new charitable badge collab roast?
Hey Christy, I thought I heard that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's called First Response Roast, with a spicy, smooth, medium roast with flavor notes of spice cake and citrus undertone.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And if that doesn't tempt our audience, a portion of the proceeds go to First Help. Oh, and don't forget, they're first responder family owned. Whether you're on day shift, night shift, or the shift of raising your family, Badge Brew has your coffee ready and waiting.
So let me ask you, what's your badge of honor? Find out by going to badgebrewcoffee.com and order yours. If you want the First Response Roast, click on Charitable Badge Collab. I know I am.